In this piece, we're going to demo the part of the computer-assisted interview that was used in the NSECE household survey to capture information on the prior week non-parental care activities of children under age 13. This is part of the, this is half of the information that we use to populate the calendar file, which is really the centerpiece of the NSECE household survey. So as we join the action, we will have already begun the interview with a woman named Rita, who has 2 children, Anne and Benny. So some things will already have been discussed. We are beginning the section that now collects information about non-parental care. What you're seeing on the screen is exactly what the interviewer would have seen during the interview. Okay, so it says, in addition to a child's parents, a child may be cared for by other adults in the household, by relatives or friends outside of the household, or by a child care professional in a center or someone's home. Next, I have some questions about various people who cared for your children during the last week. That is, from Monday, July 13th, 2015, to Sunday, July 19th, 2015. You can tell when we're taping this. Good. Let's start with Anne. Please tell me all of the people or organizations that cared for him or her last week. Do not include any parent of a child under 13 in this household or his or her spouse. Okay, and so Anne was cared for Munchkinland, and so we're going to select the Add Provider button. And next, and then we're going to type in Munchkinland. Next. Is there another provider for Anne? And the answer is yes. And Anne was also cared for by Rita's mother, Gina. And so Gina appears in the list of household members. Is there another provider for Anne? No, there are no other providers for Anne. Okay. So now let's talk about Benny. Benny is Anne's brother. Please tell me all of the children or organizations that cared for him or her last week. Do not include any parent of a child under 13 in this household or his or her spouse. So Benny was cared for by Franklin Elementary School. So we're going to add a provider. And the interviewers were trained, Franklin Elementary School. The interviewers were trained to capture any non-parental care provider, meaning anyone who is not a parent that looked after these children. Franklin Elementary School is not what we would consider an early care and education provider, but it is a someone or something other than one of Benny's parents who looked after Benny. And so we're going to go ahead and add Franklin. We have already added Franklin Elementary as a provider for Benny. Is there another provider for Benny? Yes. And Benny's other provider is also my mother, Gina. And is there another provider for Benny? Yes. Benny goes to karate club. And so we're going to add another provider there. And so, again, as with elementary school, there are lots of things in the non-parental care provider that are not regular early care and education, but collecting this data helps us understand where children are, how parents manage their work schedules so that they can be at work without worrying about the safety and well-being of their children. Okay, is there another provider? No, there are no more providers for Benny. Don't skip to another section, just say no. Thank you. Now I'd like to understand your child care schedule last week. Okay, so this is a larger screen. Let's just get oriented for a moment. So the convention is that if it's all in capital letters, then it's just for the interviewer as an instruction. None of that would get read aloud. So the instruction across the top says, for care arrangement reported by respondent, select provider from the drop-down menu and ask C2A1 and C2D below. If a provider cared for child multiple times in the day, each session of care should be reported separately. Okay, then we'll go ahead and return to the language that would actually be used. So thinking about last Monday, that is Monday, July 13th, 2015, who cared for Anne? Do not include any parent of a child under 13 in this household or his or her spouse. And what I have is that Anne was at Munchkinland from 8 to 3 p.m. So we're going to select Munchkinland. We write in 8 a.m., I think. And then we can tab over to C2D and record 3 p.m. Let's see if that worked. And then Gina, who was my mother, took care of her from 3 to 7 p.m., after which I came home from work. And then I was home the rest of the evening. So we can scroll down and go ahead and hit next. Okay, so now for efficiency, we allowed respondents to collapse some information. So here we ask, thinking about Anne's schedule for last week, was any day's schedule last week the same as last Monday? And here what we can see is Anne's Monday schedule. She was at Munchkinland from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then with Gina, her grandmother, from 3 to 7 p.m. And it turns out that, yes, last Tuesday and Thursday were the same. So we'll select Tuesday and Thursday. So it was important for us that we collect what actually happened over the course of a week rather than what was usual or supposed to happen. And so we ask, sometimes a child's schedule on a specific day is different from his or her regular schedule for that day of the week. Was Anne's schedule last Tuesday identical to Monday that week? Or were there some differences in when or where she spent time those 2 days? But it sounds like they were identical. So we can go ahead and mark identical. If there were differences, we could adapt a little bit. Okay, so then we've covered Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Thinking about last Wednesday, that is Wednesday, July 15th, who cared for Anne? Do not include any parent of a child. So on Wednesday, I took Anne to the doctor at 9 a.m. And then dropped her off at home with my mother at 1 p.m. My mother took care of her until 8 p.m. when I got home from work. So what's happening here? From 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., Anne was actually with her mother. So that's not non-parental care. So that doesn't get entered into the calendar. The first non-parental piece is when Gina, the grandmother, takes over. And so we enter that Gina took her from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, so we're done for the day. Thank you. So thinking about Anne's schedule for last week, was any day's schedule last week the same as last Wednesday? And no, Wednesday was a very unusual day, so there were no identical days. Okay. Was Anne's schedule last Thursday identical to Monday that week, or were there some differences in when or where she spent time those 2 days? So we've done Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We had previously said that Thursday was the same as Monday. Now that Thursdays come up in the order of the days of the week, we're just confirming what the plan was. And in fact, they were identical. Okay. So that brings us to Friday. Thinking about last Friday, who cared for Anne? And so Anne was at Munchkinland from 8 until 2. Then from 2 to 7 with my mom. After which I was home from work. Okay, so thinking about Anne's schedule for last week, was any day's schedule last week the same as last Friday? And no, there were no days identical to Friday. And that brings us to Saturday. Who cared for Anne last Saturday? Anne was with me all day. And so then we're going to select used parental care only. We don't need to enter any times because that can only happen all day. And then thinking about thinking about Anne's Saturday schedule, was any day last week identical to the same as Saturday? And yes, Sunday was the same. Sunday also, Anne was with her parents all day. So about Sunday, just to clarify, was Sunday identical to Saturday, or were there some differences in when or where she spent time those 2 days, and they were identical? Okay, does anyone else regularly care for Anne, even if they didn't happen to care for him or her last week? By regularly, I mean at least 5 hours each week. So if there had been something unusual, if a provider had been on vacation last week, and so Gina was just subbing for the usual after-school provider, for example, we would want to capture that because we did want to get all of the regular care arrangements. But no, Munchkinland, my mother and I are the only people who care for Ben and for Anne. Okay, and so now what happens? We are now beginning with Benny, Anne's brother. So was Benny's schedule last Monday the same as another child's Monday schedule? No. So thinking about last Monday, who cared for Benny? So Benny was at Franklin Elementary School from 8:20 to 3:20. My mother then took care of him from 3:20 to 7, after which I was home from work. Okay, thinking about Benny's schedule for last week, was any day's schedule last week the same as last Monday? Yes, Tuesday and Thursday were the same. And was Benny's schedule last Tuesday identical to Monday that week, or were there some differences? They were identical. And was Benny's schedule last Wednesday the same as another child's Wednesday schedule? Yes, actually it was. And which child had the same Wednesday schedule? There's only one child to choose from. That would be Anne. And was that schedule, sometimes a child's schedule on a specific day is different from his or her regular schedule for that day of the week. Was Benny's schedule last Wednesday identical to Anne's schedule, or were there some differences in when or where he spent time last Wednesday, and it was identical? Okay, so thinking about Benny's schedule last week, was there a day that was the same as last Wednesday? And no, there were no days similar to Wednesday. I wonder if they didn't have school on Wednesday. Okay, so now we had already said that Thursday was the same as Monday. So we're just confirming that now. Was Benny's schedule last Thursday identical to Monday that week, or were there some differences and it was identical? Was Benny's Friday schedule the same as another child's Friday schedule, and it was not? Thinking about last Friday, who cared for Benny? Benny was at Franklin Elementary School from 8:20 to 2:20. And then my mother took care of him from 2:20 to 7. After which I was home from work. Okay, thinking about Benny's schedule, was any day schedule the same as last Friday? And there were no such days. Was Benny's Saturday schedule the same as another child's Saturday schedule? No, it was not. Thinking about last Saturday, who cared for Benny? Benny had karate club from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. That's it. He was with me the rest of the day. Was any day's schedule last week the same as last Saturday? And there were no other days like that. So was Benny's Sunday schedule the same as another child's Sunday schedule? And the answer is that yes, Benny was with me and Anne all day. And which child had the same Sunday schedule? Well, there's not much of a choice there. And were they the same? They were identical. Does anyone else regularly care for Benny even if they didn't happen to care for him last week? And the answer to that is no. I think that we can stop there. And so you see that that's how we collect the calendar information. The format for collecting parents' activities, work-related activities such as work, school, and commute and training worked very similarly. We did several things that you probably noticed to make sure that we weren't introducing differences across days that would just be kind of measurement error. So we tried to both make efficient parents' reporting of, oh, it's just the same as, and also therefore make days consistent where they should be. Of course, the data that you will be using in the calendar is structured very differently, but hopefully this demo helps you understand how the data were collected so that they could be then formatted into the structure of the calendar file. Thank you.